And now, a word from our sponsor. Ayaya songs are about our histories. Ayaya is an Inuit-owned firm that tells our stories in many languages across Canada. They are experts in publishing children's books, usually in syllabics, and they do large multi-language projects like the reports of the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Commission. If you need help getting your stories into classrooms or homes in Cree, Inuktitut, or other Indigenous languages, check them out at ayaya.ca. That's ayaya.ca. Ayaya is a proud sponsor of the Roots and Hoots podcast.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Roots and Hoots, a podcast project produced by the Legacy of Hope Foundation. Since 2020, we have been gathering, laughing, learning hard truths, and sharing in community conversations with Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island. Each episode, we learn something new, and we're excited to be sharing this journey with you. Roots and Hoots is about connecting with and celebrating Indigenous people's contributions to their fields of study, work, and cultures. We also speak with allies who share how they are furthering the work of reconciliation in Canada. To learn more about the Legacy of Hope Foundation and the work that we do, please visit legacyofhope.ca.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Roots and Hoots. This week, host Gordon is joined by Waneek Horn Miller. Waneek is a Mohawk Olympian, mother, motivator, and an incredibly inspirational human being. In this interview, she discusses the seminal upbringing she received from her mother, including the value placed on sports and how it helped her navigate difficult moments in life, such as the siege of Kanienkeháka, popularly known as the Oka Crisis, to her journey to the Sydney Summer Olympics, becoming a role model, and ultimately finding ways to honor and fulfill her responsibilities to give back. Please enjoy this special episode of Roots and Hoots.
So we're talking to our guest today is Waneek Horn Miller from the Ganawagi First Nation Reserve just outside of Montreal. Maybe Waneek, you can just tell us a little bit about your family background, where you're from, and your cultural background, that sort of stuff, your personal background.
For sure. So I'll give you my whole name because Waneek Karakwinunta Ona Garagete Sunshine Horn Miller. My mom thought I was gonna be the last kid. I wasn't.
Okay.
Give me all the names. And so my mom's from Kahnawake, which is right across from Montreal on the South Shore. My dad is from Ohsweken or Six Nations.
Ohsweken.
Yeah, so that's where
George
he's
Miller. I know
George Miller.
George.
You remember
Yeah.
George?
I used to hang out with him.
Yes. Yeah, that's my dad.
He was in Ottawa for a while.
Oh, he was in Ottawa probably because we moved back. I was born, in Kahnawake. My mom moved here. This is where I started in Ottawa, where I started all my athletics and stuff like that. But then we moved back to Kahnawake after when I was 14, 15 years old. And
Yeah.
that's where I was for the next 25 years until I came back to Ottawa. And I'm back here. So back and forth between the two.
Okay. Do you speak you're Mohawk? Do you speak Mohawk?
No, not as good as I understand, but not no, not as good as I'd like to. Yeah.
You come from a family of incredible people.
Mm-hmm.
What teachings from your family or community have stayed with you?
Well, so I was raised by a single mom. My mom, so my dad, you know him, but he really wasn't able to be a dad. He kind of, and I really grew up with without really fully understanding him, because he was so very much on the periphery of my life.
Yeah.
So raised by a very strong mother, my mom, Kanienkeháka Horn, activist from the 60s, very controversial, still to this day, very controversial. She was a woman really ahead of her time in a lot
Yeah.
of ways.
Yeah.
So when I think about my mom and I think about the teachings, you can learn from every experience. Very lucky to have a strong mom who is a language keeper, who is, was raised traditionally, was very politically knowledgeable, very active. and understood when she started having kids, when she was in her 30s when she started having kids. She really understood what the world was like and what it was going to be like for her daughters. And so she made two really important decisions for me and my sisters. And one, no drugs and alcohol were allowed in our home, like none, no, not even smoking. And I mean, I was born in the 70s, so chain smoking was an Olympic sport back then. Um,
Okay.
so no drugs and alcohol, and she put us into sports. She
Yeah.
actually, when we moved back to Ottawa, we lived right across from the YMCA downtown, and she rented out a 2-bedroom apartment, and she she subletted those rooms to some elderly people, and she, with that extra money, she bought me and my sisters a full membership at the YMCA, and she
What
put
year would this be? About,
what 1976, 77, 78, that
late
kind of time.
70s. Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
late
late
70s.
70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got to remember, like, my mom was really like that generation. She's 86. She was at the beginning of that reclamation of Indigenous languages, Indigenous names, like we all have Mohawk names. And, she wanted us to be proud. She wanted us to be raised proud. And so, she didn't want to put us into sports that were judged, or even team sports, because she knew that even in team sports, there's an element of like, do you fit the team mold? Do you not fit the team mold? You're a little bit different. Like that kind of, the culture of sport was very much kind of mainstream white Canadian and like 30 years behind kind of social norms, if you be honest, right? So she chose swimming and running for me and my sisters, and that's what she put us in. And
Yeah.
so, you know, I was very lucky to have a very strong mom, and she invested all her effort and time into us, her kids. And
Mhm.
what have I learned from that? Well, man, have I ever been humbled since I become a mother. It is not easy. It is not easy to be a parent, man. Like,
Yeah. My daughter tells me that too.
right? Does she say that? Oh,
Oh, yeah.
I now have a 16-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 9-year-old, and I am always calling my mom and saying, how? Like, as controversial as my mother has been her whole life, you can't really dispute what she was able to, like, it wasn't a perfect upbringing. But she has, my oldest sister is a medical doctor. She's the Dr. Ogisto Horn. She's the
Oh,
president of the Indigenous Physicians Association. My
awesome.
other sister, Dr. Gahonde Horn Miller, is a professor, and I think she's vice president at Carleton University. Then
Well,
me, Olympian, and then my little sister's an award-winning actor. And if you think about it, like, you know, regardless of what you think of a person, if their children are succeeding like that, it is a reflection of parenting. And
yeah.
it is hard. Like, successful children are not, just born. Like, you can't just kind of like say, okay, here. It's
Yeah.
it's a lot of effort, a lot of investment, a lot of work,
Yeah.
a lot of trial and error. Because if you think
Yeah.
about, your generation, you're younger than my mom, and my dad, but you got to remember that generation, what the upheaval of their worlds. And my mom didn't really grow up with really, like, she grew up with her grandparents, but like, uh, it was tumultuous for her. So how did she know to be a mom? And it was a lot of trial and error, very
Yeah.
trying hard, failing, screwing up, trying again, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. So
Yeah. Did any of your family attend residential school or day school?
my mom went to Indian day school. Um, my father, so funny thing, when I speak about my dad, so my dad's, well, you remember him, very smart man,
Yeah.
well educated. He went all the way to Stanford and wrote his PhD thesis, but never defended it. Weirdly
Really?
enough. No,
I didn't know he had a PhD.
yeah, he got an anthropology. Like, he was doing his thesis work up in the Arctic, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it was anthropology, and then um he ran Lamakaza College or Manitou College, if you remember that in the 70s. It was a cégep in northern Quebec.
Mhm.
People like Ghislain Picard, former regional chief Ghislain Picard. A lot of people went to Lamakaza College. It was the first Indigenous college. Like I think it's near Trois-Rivières in Quebec, but
Okay.
in Quebec, after high school, you go to college, like you do a
Mhm.
2-year college, and that's what it was. It was an Indigenous college. So like my dad was, well educated but like he had ghosts, he had his issues. And I remember watching, you remember the apology? What year was that apology when Prime,
2008.
was it 2008? The
I think
apology?
so.
Yeah, I thought it was earlier than that. I remember watching it on TV and seeing my dad sitting in the audience on Parliament Hill.
Really?
And I went, what is he doing there? I mean, we really had not a good relationship, but like we didn't talk often. I didn't know what he was up to. But I did call him and I say, what were you doing at the apology? He goes, well, I was there. And he said, I remember he went to almost like a residential school. It was a Christian college.
Yeah.
Um, and he was super intelligent, like very smart man. So he got that scholarship at this college. And yeah, so whether it was a residential school in the classic sense, I don't know. He never clarified it for me, but
Yeah.
he had a lot of the traits of people who went through a residential school experience,
Yeah.
but like both my parents, my mom, hers was in Kahnawake. She went to a day school there.
Yeah. 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 Just like your dad. You said your dad was in the Arctic, and that's probably
Mhm.
why my wife's Inuit, and so we kind of hung around with. I kind of hung around with Inuit um, at that time, and your dad was. He would come and sit with us, at Howard Johnson. He'd, at the end of the day, we'd go there and hang out, and he'd always be there. Well, most of the time he was there. Him and a guy from Kanienkeháka, a guy named Tom Merkel.
Yeah.
I guess they were friends. They're both Mohawks. And I always found your dad to be a humble man. He never bragged about anything or anybody. And he'd usually just sit there quietly, and listen to us, talk, and that's probably, he loved being around Inuit. I think,
Mhm.
when you mentioned that he was in the Arctic, it's probably what he was keen to listen to them talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, many of us went to residential school and day schools as well. And those were very challenging times for many of us that went there. You've spoken about nearly surviving the Mohawk resistance at Oka when you were young.
Mhm.
Looking back on that turning point in your life and history, and now as a mother, athlete, and leader, how do you understand the significance of that event in your life? What comes to mind? Right.
It's interesting, like the Oka crisis, I mean, as I've grown and as I've gotten older, you see everything from a different lens. When you're
Right.
young, you see it from that like radical, angry, going through that as a teenager, as a 14-year-old. Um, I was really angry, really, really angry, really hurt, really confused, no longer innocent, really like I had lost my innocence, seeing just seeing kind of the Canadian state for what it really was. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? We're living in a time where we've seen, the US use military on the streets of cities in the United States. And like I remember like that. I remember seeing tanks rolling down. I
Yeah.
remember experiencing helicopters hovering 24 hours a day and guns
Mhm.
being pointed. And I'm like, and when I tell people, I'm like, don't think that this hasn't happened on Canadian soil in our generation. And
Mhm.
difference between us is that we never left our territories. like they came to us, they came to our territories.
Yeah.
And it was not like we were going and even expressing like any types of violence towards the communities around us, but it was us, defending our territory. And seeing the like just that like rage that we saw from these people coming and burning us in effigy, and uh race riots, and our elders being stoned by these protesters as we were trying to get them out of the community to go. Like these were elders that needed hospital care, that needed to go to
Yeah.
the city, and they were being stoned, and one was killed. And I remember the most prevalent thing to me, obviously, it was the what was happening, but also watching the police do nothing.
Yeah.
That was something that stuck with me. Really, it like dawned on me as like like I was raised by my mom, like police, respect authority, that type of
Mm,
thing.
yeah.
I realized they weren't there to protect me.
No.
And it became like I really, after that, became a person that was like, I will protect myself.
Yeah.
My people will protect me, but I will protect myself. And, after that, I had very bad post-traumatic stress disorder. I
Hmm.
didn't know that was what it was. I came from a community. The entire community had it. Like it's like when you're in an environment where everybody is struggling in some way,
Yeah.
shape, or form, it just becomes normalized. I can imagine many people from residential schools understand that feeling of a normalized sense of mental
Yeah. It's
stress.
trauma.
It's
Trauma.
trauma,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's normalized, so everybody's in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I really found solace in my sports. And I remember I often tell people this because I speak a lot about trauma. I speak a lot about like what the role it played in my journey to the Olympics.
Hmm.
And my I remember about 6 days after we got out of military prison, and I had been stabbed, and I was really struggling.
Yeah.
Um
Tell us about that. You said you almost got killed
yeah.
during the Oka resistance. What
Well,
happened there?
it was on September 26th. So it was September 26th, 1990. We had negotiated to end the crisis, like it was done. Funny enough, people often wonder why that day? Well, we wanted to outlast Wounded Knee. Stand up at Wounded Knee. So, I mean, obviously, I wasn't making any decisions really. I was a kid. So when we were leaving the treatment center, we were preparing. It was about 5:30 in the evening. Um, and sun was going down. I remember that. And we were getting ready to leave, and negotiations with the army had been, okay, you're going to walk out. Like, so I don't know if the listeners remember, we got encircled on the kind of like by the Canadian Armed Forces on a piece of land around a treatment center, which was kind of like our headquarters, but the land around it was about the size of a football field. It wasn't very big. And then
Yeah.
barbed wire was all around that. And then all like, I would say thousands of troops, right?
The army was there,
The
right? The
army,
army
yes,
was there. Yeah.
troops. It was all there. And so there was like a front gate, and we were supposed to leave there, get on a bus, and be taken to be processed at a military prison. But about right before we were heading out, the press, so there was like international press there. And, you know, we all know the role that the press has played in like Vietnam is a great example of how important the press was to show what was really happening, right?
Mhm.
And we had a few Vietnam veterans that were inside with us, and they were like, no, we have to have the press here. They're going to keep us safe. They're going to like they will live stream it or broadcast it
Right.
live.
Yeah. Yeah.
So right before we were leaving, the press barricade got pushed back about 400 meters down the highway, and they
Yeah.
wouldn't have seen us, right? So we got very nervous, and we said, no, we're not going to go out the front gates. We're going to go along the barbed wire. And there was 3 levels of barbed wire. And there was a corner, like kind of the corner, there was only 2 levels. So we I was given like the ID and money and all the kids, like I was put with the kids, and we didn't want to get the kids kind of intermixed with the adults because they might get like, we wanted to show these are children, let them out, keep them safe. So we were all in the front. We go to the side where the barbed wire is only 2 levels high, and someone had a spinal board, those spinal boards used for transporting people with neck injuries, and they put it on top of the barbed wire, and everybody started to pour out onto the highway. And it was chaos because obviously we weren't following what they told us to do. And everybody was trying to get as close to the media barricade as possible. Like, get as close as you can. That's going to keep you safe because the cameras are there. And also a whole bunch of Mohawks and our supporters were there waiting for us. And so like as I was going, I remember people kind of like as people started to cross over, they started tackling and fights started breaking out. It was like absolute chaos. And I had my little sister who was 4 at the time, and we were getting ready to cross over, and she looked up and there was this young non-native soldier there. He was gotta be like late teens, early 20s. He looks so young. And he was frozen. He was looking around at the chaos, like just just it was crazy. I can't even express it. The chaos doesn't express how it was. It was just really the
Crazy.
it stank of danger. It stank of like anything could happen. You could like a shot would be fired, like that kind of feeling of like,
Yeah.
oh my God. And he was standing there and he was standing in our way. And I remember she looked up at him and she was calm at that time, but then she saw his gun. He had a really big gun, and she started to make this sound. And like, I often try to explain that sound. I can't, the sound I'll never be able to explain, but I remember the feeling it gave me because, as a mom and an auntie and a big sister, I knew a lot of sounds that kids make, right? Like, I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm hurt, I'm frustrated, like cries, different types of cries that a child will make. But there's this one that like, it's a sound that is so unique because it's a sound the child will make when they're worried, they're terrified they're going to die. And she
Yeah.
started to make that sound, and I remember the feeling of like this overwhelming, you know, I had to get her to safety. I had to help her. And I looked at him and I said, he's not going to hurt us. He's not going to hurt us. I said, he's not going to hurt us. He's not going to hurt us. You're not going to hurt us. And I pushed him back, and he took a step backwards, and he let us walk by him. And I got out into the highway, and I got intercepted by another soldier who was trying to push me back, because what they were doing is, if the press back barricade was over here, they were trying to push as many of us where they had encircled everybody. Like they were encircled by all these soldiers. They were trying to push me back that way. And I was fighting and at that moment when she started to scream like that, I had this, like, I started to kind of lose it too. Like I really started to kind of like my fear and my everything started to take over. And all I wanted to do was get her as close as possible to the press barricade. All I could think of. I mean, for a 14-year-old, you don't know. I didn't know. And so I got to the press barricade, and I recognized a soldier there who 2 weeks earlier, he was like a major or something, but I recognized him because he didn't allow my school books in, my grade 10 school books. We were trying to negotiate, and the teachers from my high school were trying to give them to me. Not that I really wanted them, but out of principle. And so I said, I know you. And I went like that, and I pulled my sister behind me. And right at that moment, I got hit in the chest. Like the wind was knocked out of me. I bent forward, and I remember my little sister holding, like wrapping her arms around my neck because I bent forward. And then somehow I fell, like someone pushed me back, and I fell on my back. So she was on top of me. I was holding her. And right at that moment, a photo was taken. And, for a long time, I didn't remember it as like a continuous memory. Like I still remember it mostly as snapshots, like, because I remember being on my back and like photographers and cameras being over top and soldiers and just all this craziness happening. And I got dragged by the back of my jacket all the way back to where they encircled everybody, and that's where my mother was. And I handed my little sister to my mother, and I looked down and I was covered in blood, and I first thought it was her. So I checked her. I was like, and she was fine. And then I looked in my shirt and I had a big gash across my chest. And like I didn't know that the order had been given to put bayonets on the ends of their weapons.
Well,
And I only got to see, we got transported to a military prison, left on the bus. Even though I tried, I remember trying to go to the front of the bus to show the MP that I had been stabbed. And she put her hands on either side, like it was a school bus. And she put her hands on either side and kicked me as I tried to approach her. And I went flying backwards.
well,
Anyway, I got to see, like, I got taken to a military prison, got processed, and they weren't sure whether they were going to charge me as an adult or release me. And at that time, all of the lawyers that had come to meet us, people like Clayton Ruby and Julius Gray, like these are human rights lawyers from across the country who come to help us. They said, you need to get her out of their sight or they're going to charge her as an adult. So
yeah,
I was released about 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and taken to Kanienkeháka. And I got to see a doctor 22 hours later. And he said, had it been like it hit off my sternum and went sideways, and he
yeah.
been a centimeter either way, it would have gone into your heart.
Well,
So
that's cool.
yeah, I really like, yeah, the wound was not life-threatening. At that time it was infected. He gave me antibiotics. He said, there's nothing I can do. I can't sew it up. I can't do anything to it. So you're gonna have to let it heal. But what I did have is really bad PTSD. And then I didn't even know when you don't even have a word for what you're feeling, but anxiety and panic attacks, all the things that we see from soldiers or people who've been through traumatic experiences, it's well known what it is now. But so I locked myself in my room and I didn't want to leave. And my mom came in after 6 days and she sat down on my bed and she says, Waneek, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to leave here. I can't handle the world out there. It's really dangerous. It's scary. I said, I'm scared. And she said, well, Waneek, you know what? Everybody will understand. But you had a dream of going to the Olympics. And,
Mhm.
at that time, I actually, like when I was 12, I was provincial champion in Ontario for 50 free.
Yeah, yeah.
I was, I had city records in Ottawa for running. I was
Well,
starting to play water polo. And she said, if you give up now, you will be that soldier's victim for the rest of your life.
yeah,
But everybody will understand. You let me know what you want to do. And then she gets up to leave, and then she kind of stopped, had her hand on the doorknob, and she turned around and she pointed at me and she said, but I didn't raise you to be anybody's victim.
hmm,
And then she left the room.
yeah,
And it was an interesting moment when you look back and you think of have your whole life ahead of you when you're 14
yeah, for sure.
and you're thinking, am I going to be? And I mean, you and I both know people who we know of those people who so talented and then something happens and then it stops. It freezes you.
Mhm.
Trauma has the ability to absolutely just stop you dead in your tracks because it can be overwhelming. And
Yeah,
that is the moment where I was like, I don't want to, I can't give that to him, And
yeah,
so that was 10 years, 10 years to the day that happened to me. I was at the Olympics.
yeah,
The Legacy of Hope Foundation has produced 30 exhibitions that shed light on Indigenous history. Exhibitions are mobile, standalone, and provide a unique museum-like experience that include first-hand Indigenous testimonies of the residential school system and 60 Scoop. The exhibitions promote healing and encourage acts of reconciliation. They can be hosted in schools, offices, parliaments, galleries, or any public space across Canada. To learn more about our exhibitions and borrowing, please contact our exhibitions department at exhibitions@legacyofhope.ca.
Well, following the Mohawk resistance, you pursued your dreams of becoming an Olympic athlete and were co-captain of the Canadian women's water polo team at the Sydney Olympics. Briefly, tell us about this time in your life, this experience you had at the Olympics. What was it like going there and the whole experience? How did you become the co-captain
Oh,
of the water polo team?
that's a whole other podcast. Just kidding. No,
Okay.
I became I was actually one of the younger players on the national team.
Yeah.
I was also I was also very outspoken. I became like the enforcer, I remember thinking and saying to my teammates, water polo is not stressful. I'll tell you, stressful. Like
Mhm.
nobody's pointing a gun at you. This is a game. Let's have a good
Yeah.
time. Let's go rumble, you know? And it was evident that the coach at the time, he said, you know, he named me and this other player. The other player by far was the best player in the world at the time. And then there's me, and I wasn't. I mean, I'm going to tell you, I had some raw materials that made me a very good athlete. But as far as being, you know, a Sidney Crosby or something like that, I wasn't that person. But I was tough, and I was resilient, and I was strong, and I was a protector. And he said, you're when I asked him, why are you naming me? You know, there were players that were older, more experienced than me. He said, because you're the only player on this team that will tell me to go to bleep bleep when I need to be told to.
Yeah.
I said,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, the Olympics is it was I can't you asked me what it was like there. I think what the Olympics or achieving a dream really signifies, like it from a very young age, after watching Elwyn Morris and, you know, other Olympians achieve, but specifically him because he's from my community.
Yeah. I remember that guy.
It was a guiding light. And then when Oka happened, it became this like it saved my life, that objective. Like this is where I need to go. And I'm not going to stop until I get there. And I'm going to prove everybody wrong. I'm going to prove all the people who ever said I couldn't do it. My people are not smart enough, not tough enough, not resilient enough. Like all the stuff I'd heard growing up about Indigenous athletes, uh, and in particular, that guy who stabbed me, I wanted to prove it. Like it became that destination.
Yeah.
And when you get there, the Olympics is like Sydney Olympics was amazing. Um, to be there, to experience your dream. It's like it's otherworldly almost. You're like, what? Like, what am I doing here? And and playing in front of my family and have my community kind of watching my games. Like, I didn't win a medal, and we didn't finish where I hoped we would. We were medal.
Yeah, your team didn't win the
No,
medal.
no, we didn't win a medal. We came fifth.
Like,
But
how old were you? How old were
I
you
was
in
24.
24?
Yeah,
Okay.
24.
And were you picked how long have you been playing polo? I mean, water polo.
I had probably been playing 11 years. I started in grade 9.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So were you picked, or did you have to try out, or what?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, you have to try out. Like I made the junior national team when I was 18,
Yeah.
and I made the senior national team a year and a half later after my junior world championships.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to qualify. You have to qualify your spot, right? As a country. And
Yeah.
we had to literally the team we had to beat were the Americans. And we beat them in 1999. And then that's how we won our berth to go to the Olympics. So you have to make the team. So we beat them in 1999, but I still wasn't for certain going to the Olympics. I still had to make the cut. And
Yeah.
that last cut was made about a month and a half before the Olympics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I always wondered, like when you're playing polo, water polo, how deep is the water?
9 feet, 10 feet deep. It's a pool. It's 30 meters long, 25 meters wide. That's an Olympic pool.
That's a lot of swimming.
That's a lot. Swimming, fighting, shooting.
Gosh.
That's why water polo, when you look at when they like physiologically test athletes in different sports, considered one of the toughest sports
I would
because
think so.
you
Yeah.
have to have endurance, but you have to be able to have like that strength to fight. 'Cause it's a sport that is like not for like the bigger you are, the better. And I'm not the biggest water polo player, right? I'm only 5'8". And so but it is also like you have to have the wherewithal to make tactical decisions when you are exhausted and fighting and everything's. But I love it because it was the place that I poured all of my anger, all of my
Yeah.
rage, and I distilled that rage into something that was very effective as a water polo player.
Yeah. What has the world of sport and being an athlete taught you, and how did it lead to your involvement with the Assembly of First Nations?
Yeah. I have, since I went to the Olympics, like I went to 5 North American Indigenous Games. I went to the first
Wow.
ones in 1990, and I went to 4 more after that, both as an athlete and as a coach. I also went to the Indigenous Games after I came back from the Olympics. I still
Yeah.
competed. And it's because sport, what sport is not used by Indigenous people the same way the mainstream society views sport. People will look at now, oh, my kid's talented, they're going to be an NHL superstar. They're my this. No, our people, it's like, it's going to save your life. It's going to prevent suicide. It's going to
Yeah.
help addictions. It's going to keep you out of jail. It's going to, you know what I mean? Like it's,
Yeah.
in many ways, it was how I self-medicated my PTSD was through sport.
Wow. Yeah.
I knew that, and I knew how important that was for me.
Yeah.
But how inaccessible to a lot of our people sport is. It's expensive. It's you have to not only have the money to do it, but you also have somebody there to get you to the get the pool, the track, the rink. Like it takes a lot of effort to get
Yeah.
someone, and it's not, you don't do anything on your own. You have a lot of support. And
Mhm.
so I have become an outspoken advocate for sport accessibility. Some may call me a critic of the current Indigenous sport delivery system. But I feel strongly because, I've been traveling as a motivational speaker since I was in my late teens.
Mhm.
I've been to so many communities,
Yeah.
Thompson, OCN, all these places all across North America. And I have seen, and I've been brought into communities who are in suicide crisis, who are trying to, like, they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I go in as this Olympian and I say, hey, you can do this too. You can be an Olympian too if you dream and work hard enough. And then I look around and say, but how? Where's the facilities?
Yeah.
Where's the expertise? Like, how? And the reality, it really started to dawn on me that, holy cow, like, unless I fight for accessibility and I fight, it's not going to happen. If you're from a fly-in community somewhere up north and you don't have an intentional system that's going to help you, and again, it's very hard to happen, right?
Right. Right.
So, I've been very vocal about that, and because I feel strongly like, hey, my Olympics is 26 years in my rearview mirror. I'm not trying to make this about Waneek Horn Miller. What I feel strongly about is I speak with, in the center of my heart, all those young people who don't have the platform that I have.
Yeah.
And I fight for that. They always motivate me. They motivate me to keep fighting, keep pushing. And you know what? Being controversial. Hey, I'm a chip off my own mom's block, right? I'm going to be controversial. It's
Yeah, I
just the
can see
way
that. You were director of community engagement for the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls National Inquiry.
Yeah.
Tell us about your time there. It must have been a difficult and challenging experience for you.
Wow. Um, extremely hard. I
Yeah.
had no idea what I was getting into. When I was asked to apply, I had a 9-month-old baby. My youngest was 9 months old. And I thought,
Hmm.
oh, but like, when you get that kind of request from our community, you can't say no. Like it was something that I felt strongly about. It was murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, but also like victims of violence, victims of all of that, right? Like our women. And so those I was only able to stay 9 months. Why? Because yeah, it was extremely stressful to be
Yeah.
in that. We
I
learned
can imagine.
on the job what it meant. What does trauma-informed care mean? I had no clue what that meant. I was learning on the job. What does that mean? How do you provide a trauma-informed, safe environment? And then there was like the politics, the underlying politics of the government at the time. Like, not a lot of people know that murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. I mean, we do know the Native Women's Association was the first kind of official organization that was pushing that. You remember the marches and everything, right? Stolen Sisters was their movement. And I when I really started to delve into the issue working there, I realized that MMIWG had been an issue since the mid 90s. And, Harper was asked, and he was never a big friend of Indigenous people, but we need to look into this. And the current and the national chief at the time was, we need to push this. We need to have an inquiry. We need to do something. But the Stolen Sisters was just part of it. It was all the things that made Indigenous people unsafe, the healthcare system,
Yeah.
housing, urban, everything, right? And he said, no, too expensive. So when Trudeau gets in, what does he do? He wraps up all those issues and says, okay, here you go. You have an inquiry. You can do it. You got 2 years. Go.
Hmm.
A mandate that was so massive. And we were the commissioners at the time and everybody at the time was supposed to get it done right away. And if you
Yeah.
look at other famous, the TRC, well, that like Justice Murray Sinclair, Wilton Littlechild, like they were the second group of commissioners. There was a first group of commissioners, right? Didn't work out. When Murray got in there as the chief commissioner, he said, we are going to figure out how we're going to do this. We need a year, right? The inquiry didn't get that. And the needs and the desires and the families of MMIWG and all of the people, the survivors, like it was a pressure cooker of politics and emotion and trauma and rage. And it was a really huge honor to be part of it, but very hard, very, very hard.
Yeah. A lot of your work centers on mentoring and advocating for the well-being of Indigenous youth. What are examples going on today that bring you hope?
Wow. Well, now that I'm a 50-year-old mom, I got a little tarmac behind me and I can like take a look back and see what's happening. We're starting to see more of our people becoming more involved with politics, like mainstream politics. You got what,
Yeah.
whether you're like love him or hate him, he's the premier, which is huge. And that's not just for Indigenous people, that's for all people in the province of.
Yeah.
You have people like Cindy Blackstock who, fighting for children in care and like all of like so, I see this movement, I see this younger generation who are incredibly like they're almost the first generation. There's a lot of them that haven't been raised with that legacy of trauma
Yeah.
in their everyday life.
Right.
They are being raised by parents who are fighting to give them quote unquote a normal life where
Yeah.
they can go after their dreams and not be so heavy-hearted about everything. And so, you know, like, and this is the thing, we have young people that are going into all facets of business and athletics and, music and arts. Like I
Mhm.
see people like Tanya Tagak who are absolute role models, you
Yeah.
know, like actors. So I'm telling you, I am very, very inspired and
Yeah.
hopeful. That that we've come a long way, but we're not there yet.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's almost like since the residential school period is over, to a greater extent, it's almost like the shackles have been taken off the indigenous person, especially the young people, and it's like a new generation of kids that are not being sent to residential school, but are actually being raised in their home communities by their parents. And that's kind of a discovery in some sense, of who they are and how much they can do with their lives. And what I wanted to ask you was about reconciliation. Um, what do you feel? It's been a buzzword in Canada for some time, and when you hear the word reconciliation, what comes to mind for you?
Reconciliation for me, it starts with me. And when I think about reconciliation and truth and reconciliation, we're not even close to um, really realizing, right? Like there's still a lot of Canadians that they cling to this ignorance because it's too hard to deal with truth. But there's also more and more Canadians that are asking themselves, really, because reconciliation is really personal. It is like it's a transformation in which it's not a destination, it's a practice. When you're
Mhm.
trying to reconcile a history you've been taught with the reality as it is coming to light. And so when I think about what reconciliation means, and when the first at Kamloops residential school, when they found you know those
Children.
those children, and I had many, many people, like non-native friends of mine, emailing me, like they were so overwhelmed by this like sadness and shock and everything, and they almost wanted me to like make them feel better, because that's my natural instinct, is I want to inspire, I want to make people feel good, I want to make them laugh. And I just said to them, I said, you need to sit in this truth, and you need to marinate in it, and then never want to feel it again. You have to remember that this is how our communities have felt forever.
Yeah.
So it's when you see regular Canadians, and when no Native people are around, or they don't have their best friends Native or whatever, when they say, as a Canadian, I've refused to accept that a certain segment of the population of women are 5 to 7 times more likely to go missing. As a Canadian, I refuse to accept that 106 communities are still on water boil advisory alerts.
Yeah.
When we start to see regular Canadians start to question what it means to be Canadian, that's when you know that the practice of reconciliation is working.
Mhm.
And so that is sort of, weirdly enough, in my journey as a motivational speaker, I've always kind of bridged this gap of being someone who's lived the worst of colonial violence and the best of an athletic career, right? So
Mhm.
they recognize me as an Olympian, and they want to know, and they think it's amazing, but then I kind of feed them the truths. But I also give them a destination. I also say, Canada, you know, we're all living here together, and we have an opportunity to build something that's never existed on this planet at any time in history.
Yeah.
That's a country that no matter what race, religion, sexual orientation or identity, geographic location, or economic level, you can achieve your greatest potential with safety and respect and contribute to that society your greatest gifts. This is what Canada could be.
Yeah.
But that, like, we're not there yet. But we
Yeah.
have to have a destination. Like, what do we want? Like,
Mhm.
what do we as human beings living side by side want? And so, and I believe that part of that goal is Indigenous people taking our rightful place at the decision-making tables. Always.
Yeah.
Not just when it pertains to our land, not just when it pertains to, our social and economic. When it pertains to the future of Canada, we need to be at that table, shoulder to shoulder, and our opinions and our understanding of
Mhm.
our own history, but also the land and the way in which we make decisions 7 generations in the future.
Yeah.
That has to be at the decision-making table, because we're
Mhm.
living in a world where seeing beyond next year doesn't seem to be how they make decisions. Oh,
Yeah.
we'll just clear cut that, or we'll poison that, or you know what I mean? Like, and they're like, oh, wait a second. This is not a good idea. What are we going to do about it? Right? So this is why I say reconciliation it's like a way of life. And it's a way of life that we're going to make this country work.
Mhm. Well, thank you very much, Waneek, for talking to us today. I want to ask you, we're at the end of our interview podcast.
All right.
If you have any last comments you'd like to make, now's the time to do it.
One of the things that I always say to our people, and like this is something that many people have said to me when they've met me, they're like, oh, because they hear about what I've been through, and like I try to be very positive and joyful. And it's not a reflection of the fact that I haven't lived through hard things or missed out on things, um, because of sort of that collective experience as Indigenous people. But one of the things that I really realized is that, and this incredible young man, named Kyron Potts said this, and it really hit home. He said, Indigenous joy is our greatest act of resistance. You have to protect your joy, because everything they've ever done to us is to take away our joy.
Mm-hmm.
So our children, they institutionalized us, they tested on us, and it was all to take that joy that we have. He
Yeah.
said, when you are joyful, you are resisting, you are being a revolutionary. And I encourage everybody who's listening here, cling to that joy, protect it like it's your most sacred thing, because joy for who we are and how resilient we are, the joy of where we're going in this country and in this life and in our future generations. We are very lucky as Indigenous people to become from a collective people. And I think the best years are yet to come. And that's why I'm joyful.
Awesome. Well said. Thank you, Waneek Horn Miller, for joining us today.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much, everybody. And
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing the podcast.
Roots and Hoots is a podcast project produced by the Legacy of Hope Foundation. For episode show notes, please visit the podcast description and make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. For more information about the work you do, please visit legacyofhope.ca.